Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. I am so excited to have Jace Young from Legacy Farmer joining us. Jace, how are you?
I'm doing great. I appreciate the invite, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
I am so excited. I have seen your face on YouTube, the Reels. I watch some of your content. You are so passionate about farming, farm business, psychology, and succession. So I'm thrilled for this conversation. Why don't we start by getting you to share who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your story, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I mean, quick story around who I am. Obviously, my name's Jace Young. I live in a town called Hays, Kansas, so center of the state here. In Hays, I have a wife and 4 daughters, and then Legacy Farmer. Kind of the tagline for what we do inside of that company is we help farm operations from across the country and Canada go from a place of financial chaos and disorganization to a place of financial confidence and clarity. And all that foundation is built in just starting and working with the numbers and getting some clarity there. So that's kind of the quick run on me and where I'm at right now as of today. But that story and the foundation of Legacy Farmer actually goes clear back into the 1950s when my grandfather started our family farm operation in western Kansas. I grew up in a really small town called Tribune. It was a 900-person town. I grew up 20 miles in the country. Just to kind of give everybody an idea, my graduating class had 21 people in it, right? So It definitely was a true small town there. But yeah, so my granddad started the operation out there back in the 1950s and grew it into this $10 to $15 million operation by the early 2000s. And one thing about my granddad is he lived through the Dust Bowl in the 30s in Kansas. So he had a pretty tough life growing up. And anyways, it instilled certain characteristics in him where I can see why he was so successful. But through that as well, he was very much had this old school mindset where all the kids that he had 5 kids, my dad being one of them, they were expected to come back to the family operation, right? So one thing that he did and instilled in all of his kids was that they had that obligation. They felt that they were required to come back. And my parents, my dad grew up working cattle on that side of our operation, and kind of going back a little bit there, the operation was really broken out into 3 different businesses. We had the feed yard that I grew up on. We ran 14,000 head of cattle there. My dad built that up since he was a little kid. And then I had 2 uncles that managed our 3,000 to 5,000 acres of farm ground. And then I had 2 aunts that worked in the office. And then we also owned a grain elevator that my granddad had built up as well. Huge operation, right? A lot of different moving parts and pieces and things like that. My parents never left Tribune, Kansas. So they got married when they were 17 and 15. Very old school, way of thinking compared to now and everything. And got pregnant with my brother shortly after they got married, and stayed on the operation and built it until it unfortunately went bankrupt in 2005 when my dad was 45 years old. And essentially that was my sophomore year of high school. But I'm going to pause right there to see if there's any kind of questions I can answer just on kind of the run up from the 1950s to the early 2000s.
Well, I love that you share that. I am one of those individuals that have a mission here with our show. And when I heard your story, I'm like, oh, okay. I understand the burning desire and the passion and the push behind your message because you've seen your parents' livelihood fall apart, right?
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, going into 2005, my dad was 45 at the time, and he had been on the operation. I remember he told me he started writing pins when he was 5, and so and that's what's crazy, right? Is when you're going in, and specifically on the feed yard side of things, your life's work is literally physically in front of you. Right. He could drive up and down that feed yard and it sat on a quarter of ground there. I don't even remember how many pins we had there, but just miles of bunk line and pins and stuff like that. And, he could drive up and down the thing and literally recall stories from his childhood and from growing up where he was actually there and, installing that, water or installing that fence or whatever that is there. And so it's just kind of a different experience of what most people have in other industries. It's like, this is something physical here that we can see and touch and things like that. Now, going into 2005, like I said, I was going into my sophomore year of high school. And unfortunately, I witnessed the financial collapse of the entire operation. So it wasn't just my parents that were impacted. It was my grandparents. It was my aunts and uncles. It was literally a true family farm operation that went under. And the toughest thing that for me at that time, and really, I was just kind of along for the ride, right? My parents were the ones that literally got told by my granddad, "Hey, we have to shut everything down. Unfortunately, things have gotten bad enough." My dad had no idea any of this was happening, right? And there was a buildup. There were signs rolling up to that point in time there. But my dad was 100% focused on the feed yard, right? My mom was 100% focused on taking care of the household, raising me. I had an older brother and sister as well, but they were already in college by this time. Dad was not focused on that at all. And so it was a complete shock to his system when my granddad rolled up and said, essentially, your entire life's work and your identity is gone as of today. Right. And we have to start stepping into this new place. So I was with my parents and had to experience that with them. I remember that my dad told me one time, he goes, "We have $12,000 in the little attic area or doorway at the top of their closet." He goes, "That's all the cash that we have." Right. And these are people that had $300,000 to $500,000 they had saved up over years inside a checking account, obviously frozen, right? And everything was locked up. Oh, no. And so anyways, me fast forward to where I'm at today, having 4 daughters, having a wife, having these responsibilities and these people that rely on me, I have a much deeper appreciation for how my parents responded in that time when you have so many people that are relying on you. Right. Mm-hmm. And so many people that you're accountable to. And it wasn't just me from my parents' side of things. We did an interview with my dad back in 2020. And one thing I'll always remember and respect about him, too, that he said in that interview was that he wasn't just worried about me and my mom. He was more worried about the 15 employees that lived on the feed yard with him. And some of those people he'd been working with for 25 years. Right. So there's a ton of weights and accountability and responsibility that my dad felt there. And ultimately, there was no answer for it. Right. There was nothing else they could do. It happened. And now all of a sudden we had to deal with the repercussions of what took place.
Wow. That is wow. That's quite the story. When I heard that, I'm like, I understand why Jace does the work that he does so passionately. So I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking, you were going into college at that point. Mm-hmm. Were you just planning on coming back to the farm? Was that your plan?
Yeah. So my brother, my brother's 12 years older than me, and he was back at the farm operation at that time already and working on the feed yard. So everything up to that point, I mean, I was like a normal farm kid as other ones are, and had the expectation that, hey, I was going to come back to the feed yard and be able to take it over and carry on the family legacy at some point or one day in the future there. And obviously, that never happened. I was, going into my sophomore year of high school or junior year of high school at that time. So instead of coming back to the farm operation, I got to witness the farm sale. I got to witness the identity crisis that my dad went through because 40 years of his life was just ripped out of his soul. I had to help my parents pack up and sell their house that they lived in for 30 years and raise all their kids in. They filed Chapter 7 bankruptcy and everything like that. So it's funny looking back at it, right? I was just a dumb high school kid at the time. So I was more frustrated around, I don't get a senior car or any of that stupid crap, right? Those are stuff you're focused on back then. It's like, wake up, man. But looking back at it though, too, I watched my mom cry basically every day for 2 years because what killed my parents the most was, and they said this on the documentary back in 2020, was the what ifs, right? What if we wouldn't have stayed? What if we would have went and done something else, got experienced life outside of Tribune, Kansas or Western Kansas and just kind of chosen our own path versus, being expected and feeling like they had an obligation to come back and carry on the family legacy. I understand that side of it too, but that's like the hard thing for them is wondering, okay, what would our life have been if we would have stepped away, experienced, another avenue in life for 3 to 5 years and maybe the path would be completely different.
I like that. And I hear the through line in your content too about let's be certain of our future here if you're coming back to the farm. So the rug is not pulled under. Little different context, but still the same. Your future, if you're planning it, and I know we're going to go there, but wow, that's deep and impactful for your parents, everybody, and you.
Yeah.
You went into banking after that. And then do you want to talk a little bit about that and then how Legacy Farmer came into the picture?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to college, after I graduated high school and took the typical route there and got a 4-year degree that I use nothing about today or no part of today there. But following that, I got into ag banking, right? And my brother, after the feed yard went under, he actually became an ag loan officer as well, right? So I was like, well, if this works for him, it'll work for me and that type of stuff there. And so the first bank that I got into, and I worked at banks in college as well, but then I got into officially, ag lending when I graduated college there. that journey and those 4 to 5 years were really important for me because growing up on the farm operation, I witnessed all the fights. I witnessed all the family problems and challenges. I witnessed the problems that come when you're working with family and finances and all this type of stuff, right? The resentment that builds and all that type of stuff. I saw some really bad and ugly things there growing up, just with the way my granddad was, how he fought with my dad and, his other kids and that type of stuff there. But going into the bank, though, was where my entire journey kind of went full circle because growing up in the operation, I knew what was happening and the challenges that people were facing from an operational standpoint. Going into the bank, though, is where the massive gaps were exposed for me between farmers and finances, and specifically farmers and banking, and people making massive commitments, taking on millions of dollars in debt and not knowing what the hell they're doing, Tracy.
Yes.
Not really understanding the weight there. And that's why I say a lot of people, I tell them, I'm like, I was a really bad loan officer. Not because I didn't know numbers. I knew numbers really well, but because every customer that I had sitting across the table from me, across my desk, I couldn't talk to them like they were just customers of the bank because a lot of them, it was mom and dad sitting right there. Right. And so to me, like, it was like I was talking to my parents there, and I couldn't sit there and not tell them what my parents wish they would have been told years ago and just let these people make these decisions here. At the same time, though, I was in a position where, I wanted to do what was best for the customer, but I also had obligations to protect the interests of the bank as well. And that's where I just had this moral internal conflict happening for years there, where I knew at some point, like, I just wasn't going to be able to be there long term.
Funny, I had thought about a career in banking kind of in those years. And now knowing that, I'm like, I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd be like, what are we doing here? No, you can't afford this because I'm going here. I even know bankers that don't even understand numbers. Yeah. And just because a banker says yes doesn't mean that it should be a yes for you. And they're inexperienced, and we're thinking the expert, the banker, is the know-it-all. So if the banker says yes, it's obviously good, right? I don't know if you agree with that.
100%. And for some reason inside of the ag industry, we're taught, trained, and conditioned that your ag banker is a trusted business advisor. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. And I'll use myself as an example there, right? I go into the bank at 24 or 25. All of a sudden now, because I have loan officer in my title, I'm somehow qualified to be advising somebody on making a multi-million-dollar decision, right? When I've never taken on that amount of debt myself or written that type of check or had other people around me that were responsible to me, so things are different. And again, I was speaking to people at that point in time from the perspective of what would I want my parents to hear here? Yeah. Right. The weight of the decision, the things like that. And again, to your point, just because your banker says you can doesn't mean you should. But a lot of people, they trust their banker way too much there. And the problems that we're dealing with today, yes, I want to put accountability on the business owners because at the end of the day, they're the ones signing the document. The problem, though, that we're experiencing today with the ag credit crisis, specifically inside of the U.S., that wasn't done just on their own. Right? There's bankers involved in this. And to your point, bankers, they're leading people to make massive financial decisions that they're not thinking through multiple years into the future on, because they're trying to serve the interest of the bank or get their, bonus check or whatever at the end of the year. It's like, guys, we're dealing with real people here and real money and real consequences if things aren't made and driven by sound business decisions.
Yeah. Oh, Jace, we could have a few different conversations, but I'm going to go to the next one. So I'm sensing already where legacy farmer came in. So you're banking. I want to ask you this because as an entrepreneur, I'm a business person, media companies, that kind of stuff. I love those moments when inspiration strikes and you have an idea for a business. What moment what was the moment or moments where you're like, legacy farmer? Maybe you didn't even have the name, but you're like,
didn't even have the name.
Yeah. Nope. I love these stories. Do you want to go there?
Yeah. The idea for me, leaving the bank and didn't enter my mind until 2014. And I left the bank August 20th of 2016. So it took me 2 years to work through the stories, work through the emotions, work through the risk, and really just find the courage to take the jump there. Because when you're doing that, right? So think about like my parents, for example, when they lost everything, scarcity was ingrained in them going forward, right? Zero risk. We want to make sure we're protected. We want to make sure we have money in the account and that type of stuff there. And then I tell my parents, hey, I'm thinking about jumping into entrepreneurship. And I also have two babies at home at that time. I got married in 2013. We had two little girls at home at that time. And I wanted to take the jump. And it took me 2 years to kind of process through those emotions and ultimately find the courage to take the jump. It was the hardest thing I ever did, best thing I ever did. But the consequences that came from 2016 through 2019, because I didn't start Legacy Farmer until January 2019. Okay. I didn't type out the logo for Legacy Farmer until Thanksgiving 2018. And the original logo was I just typed out in literally PowerPoint. It's just funny looking back at it and like all these things.
Love it.
But when I took the jump, Tracy, my wife and I were young, and we're still young, but we were young and immature at that point too. And we had two babies. And, I took the jump from the bank without her permission. We had $4,000 in savings, and now I had no trusted source of income coming in.
Okay.
So think about the challenges that brought on our marriage at such an early stage with two babies at home at the same time too. We had a 1-year-old and a 3-month-old. Right. So it was already chaos in our household. Now you add in the financial stress, no consistent or trusted source of income going forward here. Those were challenging years for us for sure.
Pressure was on, Jace. Mm-hmm. So you had this idea, and how did it start? You're like, I'm just going to work with farmers on financials. Is that the idea?
Well, so when I left the bank there, didn't really have a game plan. I knew I was going to get into some, financial advising and that type of stuff there. Went down that route. Didn't like what I was seeing there. It was kind of the same thing, right? So I went and got my Series 6 and 63 licenses. So you could officially sell stocks, bonds, all that type of crap there. But again, though, massive red flag for me because typically when you're going to take those tests, they make you, you got to study for 3 months to officially pass both tests and all this type of stuff there. And I'm not saying I'm smart. I passed them in 2 weeks after 2 weeks of studying. So here's my issue with that is, everybody around me at the time, the group of people I was kind of rolling with, they're like, oh, this is great. Now you can go sell and you can get commissions, all this type of stuff there. That was a major red flag for me because you're telling me that all I have to do is pass 2 tests. And now all of a sudden I'm qualified to advise people in investing in a stock market that has millions, if not billions of variables and is just massive dollar amounts that I don't comprehend or understand. So again, red flag for me there, right? So following that, I dropped those licenses immediately. Then I got into some crop insurance to try to figure out, okay, is there a way here that I can help people protect at least their bottom line here, make sure they're protecting their revenue and that type of stuff. Did that for about 6 months. Didn't really kind of serve me or anything. I didn't really enjoy it. And again, through all this, no consistent source of income, Tracy. I had no idea if we were going to make our mortgage payment or anything that month, so it's just like constant stress over and over again. And then following that, I got into life insurance. Okay. And with life insurance, I worked with some other people for a while. And there was a few things there that I thought, hey, we could implement whole life insurance policies, especially for farmers or ranchers, and try to protect that legacy and give them something to fall back on. And essentially, make sure that there's enough cash and assets there to pass on to the next generation. That way we don't have the lawsuits and ultimately that legacy, dissolves, which is what we experience today. And through that, though, what I learned, because I started to meet with a lot of farmers and ranchers on this type of stuff and this strategy.
Right.
Out of integrity, I could not sell a policy, which would be a $20,000 to $50,000 a year commitment from farmers and ranchers if they didn't know their numbers. Like I couldn't do it to people. And so then this is fast forwarding into 2018, and I wrote out in PowerPoint Legacy Farmer and had the first initial idea for Legacy Farmer at that time. And then I launched it January 2019. The rest is kind of history.
I love those stories. But you know what? I'm going all entrepreneur on you here. Yeah. We'll get to the succession right away. But I imagine every one of those stops, I've had the similar journey, right? All those jobs you hated and weren't the right fit. Yep. I'm sure there was a grain of an idea, a push, a pull, a thought that helped you get to the next step, right?
Yeah, there had to be, right? And that's where we had our live event last week in Omaha. So we had 200 customers come in from across the country there. Furthest one drove from Canada 18 hours down, which I thought was crazy. That's a long drive. But anyways, one of the things I talked about on the first day was really mapping out your divine timeline is what I called it.
Ooh, I love it.
Yeah. So, and one of the things that's been beneficial for me because I've had all these experiences in my life that from an outside person looking in would be extremely negative experiences, right? And to me initially too, extremely negative. But the reality is when I look at the sequence of events and, you know, my parents losing everything, family farm operation going under, me being in the bank, having this idea, but also too, seeing the problems that were existing in the bank and also having really bad bosses in the bank as well. People that were just a-holes that I wanted nothing to do with. Thank God they were a-holes, because that's also what pushed me over the edge to leave the bank as well. And then the struggle from 2016 to 2019, where I had to go through a lot of personal development and mindset shifts and identity shifts and like try to figure out who I had to become to try to lead this thing. All that led up to me filming the first video for Legacy Farmer in January 2019, another kind of divine moment there, because my whole world was falling down at that moment, right? I had been struggling. I felt like I was dragging my wife and kids through the mud for 3 years as I was trying to figure it out. And I filmed that first video for Legacy Farmer, and it was like at that point in time was finally where, you know, I was 28, almost 29. Honestly, during that filming, I finally feel like I actually became a man. Like step from being a boy to becoming a man, understanding and recognizing that nobody was coming to save me finally. Right. Like I feel like God put me through all those struggles to make me understand and accept that, hey, nobody's come to save you. And guess what? You don't need anybody to come save you either, because I'm right here along with you. Right. And so like that, those were like some, like I talk about it and it's a quick story there, but just the power and weight of that realization there shifted everything for me. And it's shifted everything over the past 5 or 6 years of running Legacy Farmer now too.
I love it. And that divine timeline, I've thought about that too. Everything I hated, I had to go through that to get through this, to start Farm Marketer. My family's lack of succession planning is the reason I started the Impact Farming Show. If we had none of these experiences, neither of us would be sitting here, right?
Wouldn't be doing it at all.
What is the Steve Jobs quote? You can't connect the dots going forward, only going back, right? When you look back, you're like, oh, all that crappy stuff makes sense. Okay, so Legacy Farmer, we could chat. I have like about 4 conversations here already that I could have with you. Focus, Tracy. Legacy Farmer, you work with farmers on their financials and their legacy. Do you want to touch on that? And then really the name, what does legacy mean to you?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you're great with that, I'd rather end with that question, because honestly, any interviews I do too, I always, that's like one of the last things I ask them is how do they define legacy? Because if I've learned anything over the years working with more than 500 family farm operations now, everybody defines legacy differently.
Okay. Let's do that.
But yeah, so when I started Legacy Farmer in 2019, initially it was started out as just group coaching and consulting. Right. So I wanted to bring together a group of farmers, talk about problems, challenges on the operational side. But during that time, though, too, in the first 3 to 6 months, I continued to get those financial questions. And so then idea came to mind. I was like, okay, I'm going to hire a developer and I'm going to start building out the first version of our software now called Farmer Metrics. The first version was actually built in Google Sheets.
Oh,
right. And so it was my way of structuring and organizing numbers there. I learned a lot of good things in the bank as well, but I wanted to position things differently to where it actually made sense in our customers' minds. Right. And in their eyes. Right. Because the way a banker needs to look at the numbers may not be exactly the same way a farmer needs to look at the numbers and how to use them to drive big decisions inside the operation and their direction. So started building out that first version there. I paid a programmer or a developer $6,000 to build it out. Once we got to a point where I had 150 customers or so using it, I was having every time I wanted to make an update, I had to manually go into each customer's Google Sheets and update it. Right. And do that, which obviously I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. Started to catch some traction and everything there. So I hired the first actual legit software developers team that we worked with for 4 years out of Wichita, Kansas. And then we started building out the first version of Farmer Metrics as an enterprise level software there. And we've had, probably 150 different iterations and updates and versions of it come out over that time. But from 2019 to 2023, it was literally me, plus maybe 3 or 4 other people on the team. I was living in literally every seat. So I did all of our marketing. I did all of our paid ads, Facebook, Instagram, all that type of stuff. Obviously recorded all of our content, did all the sales calls, or at least a majority of them, and then had to figure out fulfillment on the back end as well. Right. So now how do I actually build out a program and a process and a system for people to actually go through? And then you get into, you got to learn back end operations. What are the systems that you're using as a company? You got to learn finances, because the way I look at finances is different than the way, we build it for our farm operators and that type of stuff there. So it's turned into this whole thing from 2019 through 2023. We had made good money. We had a good profit margin, but over that time frame as well, I put over $2 million of profits into the software. Wow. Right. And so the thing there is I was obviously taking a ton of risks there. We had 4 kids by this time. I have 4 daughters at home, so I'm surrounded by women every single day. But we taking a ton of risk here. And I look back at that time and I'm super appreciative of it, because when I started Legacy Farmer, I started with a negative net worth. I had over $100,000 in credit card debt that I had built up over the past 3 years of struggle. And so when it came to that, unlike farmers today, I didn't have a banker that I could just run and go refinance losses to. I didn't have a banker I could just go run and get a line of credit from, right? I didn't have any credit. So I had to be calculated and strategic with every single dollar I made. I had to appreciate the value of a dollar. But then when it came to putting it into the software, I couldn't build a software like what most companies do today. They have this theory of what they think their customer base will like. And then so they invest tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, go build the product. And then they find out that maybe the customers love it. Maybe they're way off track there. Every feature I added to the software, I literally built it with my customers.
Nice.
So
That's
it had to be calculated. Right? I know. Had to be calculated. It had to be strategic, and it had to be valuable for the customers there, for them to continue using it and for us to, retain customers and that type of stuff there as well. So did all that successfully from 2019 through 2023. Tons of bumps in the road, tons of mistakes that I've made across that time frame. But then I got to the end of 2023 and I decided to go out and raise my first official round of capital. Now, did I have to do it at that point? I didn't, right? I could manage 150 customers a year, charge a good fee, add massive value to their operations, make good money. And it could have been me and 2 other people, right? So just manage kind of back into the business. Had a discussion with my wife and I just told her, I was like, hey, I feel like, I feel this calling, but 2, I think looking at my divine timeline, like it is apparent in God's eyes that we have a real opportunity here to try to shift and impact the industry in a big way and help solve this problem at a much bigger scale. So I raised my first official round of capital. We raised $2 million and much easier than what I thought it was going to be, because I already had a proven product. Right. I already had customers. Like I had no idea what I was stepping into there either. I was like, I hope I can raise money. I have no idea, because I've never been in that world. And that was very much easier than what I was expecting it to be. All of 2024, we didn't grow much as far as customer base. I primarily spent my time building out our sales and marketing team. And then 2025, we've added, I think, 225 new customers or so up until this point. And we've scaled our business coaches right now. What's interesting about that is huge. I didn't know if anybody else in the bank, any other loan officers, saw the issues and problems in the bank that I do. Turns out it's a lot of them. Right. So we've added, I think, 12 to 13 new business coaches this year. And now the issue that we're running into now is we have such a high demand for what we're doing. I've had to try to scale up our business coaches and find people from the bank that have 10 or 15 years of ag finance experience that saw the problems the way I did, knew they couldn't help their customers at the level they wanted to because of the legal liability from being in the bank. And so coming over to Legacy Farmer was their way of removing the handcuffs and actually being able to provide the help and counsel to the producers and things that I wanted to.
I imagine there's a lot of people in banking that have good hearts, understand numbers, and go, this is not right.
We're not solving the issue here.
Yeah. We're not helping, right? And if in some cases you're helping farmers potentially do damage.
Yeah.
Wow, good for you. Way to go on the capital. That's a huge accomplishment. And how are you doing? That's a huge scale up this year. Sorry.
Yeah. So, we've went from, let's see, when I raised the round, we had 5 people in January of 2024. Fast forward to today, we're at 35. Right. So when I talk about, me being exposed, all of our producers and all of our customers that are coming in, they're exposed all the time. Right. Because we're looking at numbers, we're exposing all the problems and mistakes that they had made over the past 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Me, though, in my seat, I'm exposed every day by having to tackle a new problem, new challenge, new situation that I've never had any experience to before. But again, if I remember my divine timeline, no matter when I even have the hard days, it's like, okay, I know God is putting this in front of me for a reason. It's to help me advance to the next door that he's ready to open for me in the future.
I love it. And what you're doing is so needed from what I see and kind of my journey and look around and farmer issues. So good for you. I'll be here supporting you too, cheering you on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. One other thing though, too, that I want to point out with your audience. So we have and I've told all of our investors this, I've told, just people on different podcasts this as well. So we have a massive problem in the industry with farmers and ranchers and ag business owners not knowing their numbers. But after working with hundreds of them, we've gotten an insider look into their banker, right? And what's happening in the financial institution that they're using. And to this point now, I would argue that we have a bigger problem inside the ag bank with these ag loan officers who don't know ag or who aren't qualified to be in the seat that they're in, leading somebody down, making a $2 to $5 million purchase decision when they don't understand the weight and the gravity of that decision.
Yeah.
And so we're starting to see that exposed here. We have banks reaching out to us, wanting to figure out how they can get customers shifted over to us because they see the problem, but they also too, the problem is so big now, we don't have the people in place in the banks to actually be able to manage the loan portfolios there. It's such a bigger problem than what I could even comprehend. When I left the bank back in 2016, overall, total debt load inside the ag industry in America was around 300 billion. And by the end of 2025, where our projections are going to be $592 billion. There's not near enough people to handle that size of loan portfolio and actually help people make good, sound business decisions and how they're managing that debt and what they're using it for.
Wow. And especially in the market that we are in and farming with tariffs and trade issues. And I mean, all that on top of just regular farming risk, right? Well, good for you. You're doing much needed work. My whole journey through business and agriculture and just the world is like just seeing it and going, that's not right. Oh, nope. The banker might not be your friend. Oh, you need to know your numbers. And that's why I started the show really for succession planning, but is business, because at the core of it, your product's your product and you need to be a good producer. But to me, your number one skill as a farmer is finances. That's it. Like you need to be, I was going to say a banker. You need to be a CFO level intelligence when it comes to farms. But hey, Jace, one quick question. I did an episode back in the earlier years about a budget or something. And then one farmer kind of trolled me and he said, come on, like nice enough. But he said, in this day and age, farmers understand their finances and budget. And then I hear you talking and I hear your business model. Can you speak to that? Do farmers like what's the realness behind that? Because I have a sneaking feeling farmers don't know their numbers good enough. Ooh, that doesn't sound great.
So to me, let's use the total debt in America, right? So projected to be $592 billion. I'm not joking when I say this, Tracy, because we've brought in hundreds of customers. We've talked to thousands across the US as well. When I tell you that more than 90% of that debt is completely mismanaged or unaccounted for, I'm not joking there. Like it's that significant of a problem. And I'll give you one example. We had one customer come in. This was a few years ago. Big rancher, owned a lot of ground, net worth of $40 to $50 million on the balance sheet. Our first conversation, Tracy, I'm going in and this guy's, fifth generation farmer or something like that. So he comes in with a little bit of an ego, right? Which rightfully so, like that big of a balance sheet, that many acres you own around the county. Yeah, absolutely. I would too. But then on the first call, we're literally going through the basics of balance sheet structure, like just the basics of the basics that I learned inside the bank there. And that was the wake up call to where I now have zero assumption. I could give two shits how big your balance sheet is or what your net worth is or how much ground you own. I have zero assumptions on how much that person actually knows about their finances. And we also have a huge problem in the industry with playing the comparison game. Right. You look at your farmer down the road there and they got new equipment, new buildings, new house, whatever going up. Again, for me, I'm like, until I see their finances, I have zero assumptions on the overall success of that operation and how much they actually own, because I've seen it so many times where these guys come in and again, big balance sheets, highly leveraged and on the brink of disaster if something doesn't change right now.
Interesting. I look around and I see people doing their business and I know they're rough numbers just as a business person. You kind of know the size, the land value. I'm like, that math isn't mathing unless they can magic money more than I can.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay. It was funny when I was preparing for this episode, I wanted succession planning, but I'm like, goodness gracious, I want Jason finances. So I got my finance piece. Let's do succession. So we're talking about finance and then, they go hand in hand. The hard truth when it comes to succession planning. And I love that you're so direct and willing to talk about the hard stuff versus puppies and rainbows, because I think it's important. Why do you talk about the hard stuff and why you think it's so important.
When it comes to succession planning specifically.
Yeah, yeah, let's go there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, so I mean, everything that we do at Legacy Farmer, right? So there's this compounding benefit of having your numbers structured and organized. So, like I say, Farmer Metrics is the catalyst to success in all other areas of your operation. A lot of producers struggle with grain marketing. Well, how can you have a successful grain marketing strategy if you don't know your foundational numbers? A lot of producers struggle with crop insurance, but how can you have a successful crop insurance strategy if you don't know your foundational numbers? Right? No field by field level profitability, what your break even needs to be, that type of stuff there as well. This all leads into succession planning as well, right? So a lot of people that are trying to build a succession plan or hope their kids are coming back. The hard truth is that a lot of kids today, and I'll use my parents as an example. My parents made lifelong decisions based on the promises of the generation before them. The cost and the weight of doing that is far heavier than what people can understand, because there's not just a financial cost there. We have guys that are coming into the group that have been through alcoholism or divorced or all these other real life things that happen when, people are talking bunnies and rainbows and not actually giving the hard truth and the realities of where the farm operation is at. And so one of the big things that a lot of people need to do and why we want all of our members to have their foundational numbers put together is so that when it comes time to set up a succession plan, nothing's hidden, right? Nothing's being pulled out of father's head on saying, well, yeah, you should be able to do this and it's worth this and the equity is here or whatever. That's BS to me, right? We need to have a laid out plan and blueprint of where the numbers are at and what are the kids actually coming back to. Because when it comes to succession planning there, that's the first step. And I'll tell you, last week in our room, the day 3 was all about legacy and estate planning. Had 200 of our producers in that room. And I, kicking off the day, I said, how many of you guys do not have a legacy or estate plan or a succession plan set up for your farm operation? More than 80% of the room raised their hand.
Wow.
And I said, that's very interesting because this room is a really good sample size of the entire industry just in the US. And we have 1 million producers in the US that are trying to pass on the operation to the next generation. I said, so you're telling me more than 800,000 of them don't have a succession plan in place?
Wow.
Right. And so anyways, we even took it a little bit further than that. I said, okay, guys. So I had our team in the back and, with our software and everything, we know what everybody's assets are. We know what their liabilities are. I said, what do you guys think the total asset size is or value is of everybody in this room? Some guys start throwing out some numbers, 200 million, 300 million. I know for a fact it's $500 to $600 million in that room that is unaccounted for, no plan of how to pass it on to the next generation. Now, worse than that though, is I said, what total debt load do you think is in the room? And so, some people throw out 50 million, 100 million. Guys, it's 300 million minimum, right? So when it comes to succession planning, do you actually have a plan in place to set your kids up for real success, or are they coming back and just planning to inherit debt?
Yeah.
Which debt to me, that's not a succession plan. That you're not setting them up for success. You're not setting them up for, they're essentially trying to take over a sinking ship at that point, right? Which now I lay that foundation there, so they'll quit running and hiding and living in the land of bunnies and rainbows. And hey, yeah, we'll build this and pass it on. You have to have a set plan in place, and that's kind of the first stage there, and even opening the gap there for how they're going to pass it on.
I love that you go here. I do guest format for our show, and I started doing some of my own episodes because I just business experience, my experience, seeing my personal family experience. I just wanted to touch and acknowledge and share on the hard stuff. And I started doing like the top 10, just different episodes to really get that out there, right? And I love that you acknowledge the hard stuff because there are a lot of working pieces. And even when speaking for myself, when you're young, you don't know, you trust, there's just so much to this conversation. I'm just trying to get it out there so the young producers think about it. And for me, what breaks my heart, I am high on the control scale. I'll admit it. And hey, I actually don't think it's a bad thing. It's my life. Shouldn't I be in control of it? People get scared of the control word. I'm in control of my life. And I said, I am not going to get to this age now. We started farming 17 years ago when I started this platform, same time Anthony started. I said, I'm not going to get to 40 and 50. And then all of a sudden, oh, you have no future. Whoa. So when I hear that, it breaks my heart. So that's why when I say, let's talk about the hard stuff, let's talk about the hard stuff because we have a lot of work here as an industry founders, Gen 2, to pass the farms on and make sure also as a whole industry that we get this done so that it doesn't, yes, big farms get bigger and that's okay.
Yep.
But if we want the beautiful legacy and opportunity of the family farm to continue on, we need to do this, right?
Yep. So stage one is getting the number structured and organized so you actually know what you can or cannot pass on, right? And if you're going to an estate planning attorney, first thing they're going to ask for is well-structured balance sheets for each individual business and all the assets that you guys have there, so they actually knows what they can pass on. But stage two now is where things start to get really difficult, because let's say you have one son or daughter that stays back in the operation, right? The other ones move off into the city and things like that. Up until now, general thinking on this topic is, yeah, I'm just going to split the assets evenly between the kids, right? And here's something that happened in the room. We had several people in there that had experienced lawsuits with their siblings, or were currently in lawsuits with their siblings because of decisions that were made 50 or 60 years ago.
Wow.
Right? And so think about that. All right. And think about just the importance of the decisions that we're making today when it comes to passing on the operation to the next generation, and the consequences or implications that our kids will have to deal with. And maybe it's our grandkids or our great grandkids that are going to have to feel the weight and consequences of the decisions that we're making today.
Yikes.
And so that's where it gets really challenging. Now, on top of that, let's say, you've accepted that, hey, I'm not going to split up the operation evenly between the kids. That's where you need to have other things. Like when I was doing whole life insurance before I started Legacy Farmer, I was trying to solve that problem where if you have son or daughter that comes back, they can take over all the farm operation assets and the other kids get cash. Because otherwise, if they don't, and the parents just decide to leave everything behind and split it evenly, well, now the operation has to buy the ground twice, or maybe it's 3 times. Right? Because the other kids, they may not give a shit about the farm operation. They just want their cash, which is fine. That's fair, right? But there's other things that we can do here to make sure they're set up for success now. Now, at the same time, though, let's say the operation is too loaded with debt, right? Well, now you're in a situation as a parent where you have to pick and choose, because the other kids now, if the operation is loaded with debt and you split things up evenly, you're setting up the son or daughter that came back to the operation that's actually going to take it over with some really tough business partners that may or may not have wanted to take over that part of the operation. Right? Maybe they don't want to inherit it if it's just going to be inheriting debt. Right? So that's where we get into some tough conversations there as well.
Oh, gosh, so much good stuff. Okay, I want to pick your brain very strategically and go to the founders, because you actually work with them. And I think there's a lot of younger Gen 2 that are out there and wanting to have the conversation or getting ignored. Why? I want to start with the founders and kind of go strategically. Why do the farm founders, what are some hard truths about the founders? Why do they avoid it? What are their fears? Real from the ground. You work with these guys.
Yeah. So we'll go back to succession planning, right? And bringing your kids into the operation. One of the hard truths that they need to understand, like my granddad, for example, my granddad built the entire operation, right? A lot of that, though, he went through some struggles. I totally see that. But a lot of that was built through the struggles that he went through as a kid as well, right? Like God, divine timing, right? Divine timelines, divine moments in his life that built him into the man that could build a $10 or $15 million operation, handle the weight that is required to build that, take on the risk, be able to deal with the financial weight of that through that. Whereas like with me right now, I can do that. But again, if the farm operation was still operating today, Tracy, there's no way I would be the person that could lead Legacy Farmer with where it's at today, right? I have to continue to evolve and grow. And so with the parents that have kids coming back to the operation, this is a hard truth for them. Your kid, son or daughter, hey, they may be great they may know where everything's at in the farm operation, but the person that they have to become to handle the financial weight of the operation, the dollar amounts moving through. Maybe it's got 10 or 15 employees like our feed yard does. Legacy Farmer has 35 employees. To me, that's not just 35 people. That's 35 people plus 3 or 4 of their family members in their home that are going to be impacted by the decisions that I make leading this thing. There is a weight that comes with that. And it cannot just be explained. It has to be felt. It has to be experienced. And so a lot of these people, the reason that we have second or third generations coming back to the operation and you kind of have this gap where the operation doesn't grow at all, or they're just completely in defense mode, it's because you picked a child to hand over all the assets to that did not have the natural characteristics or didn't go through a challenging life to build them into the person that could handle the weight of leading this thing going forward. You know what I mean? And that's where it gets really difficult, where a lot of people, they want their son or daughter to maybe come back and take it over. What are you going to do if your son or daughter doesn't have the characteristics to handle the weight of a $10 million operation, all the financial decisions there, and doesn't have the grit required to push this thing forward into the next generation? Because every operation now, if you want the kids to come back, it's a requirement that it has to grow. Revenue has to grow, income has to grow in order to support more families coming back to it. You have to have a driven and determined person leading that thing that is comfortable with the risk and the weight and can manage all that, as well as build the operation going forward as well. That is a huge thing and a very hard truth that a lot of people don't want to hear. But the ones that come back and they want their son or daughter to take over the operation just because they have the same last name, if all you did was treat them and train them as an employee of the operation, I don't care if they're 50 or 60. Once all that weight gets dumped on them, you're going to see a majority of them crumble. Yeah. They will crumble under the weight of that operation there, and it will not do anything, or it will go under because you don't have the right person leading it after you're gone. And that's a really difficult conversation to have with people.
Ooh, that's a big one. I've said that to Anthony too about farming and about kids coming back to the farm, about my media company. I'm like, and it's not going like this, but I'm like, not everybody's built for this or want to deal with it, because it's like, okay, fire today. And the sheer volume, it sounds dreamy, right? Like, I'm going to be speaking to a group of young farmers, and then they want to know how to take over the family farm. I'm like, exactly what you said to them is kind of where my brain's at. But I'm like, that's not puppy and rainbows. That's not exciting. But coming back to the farm sounds so dreamy to kids until they realize the actual weight of the responsibility, right?
And so that's what we talked about in the room last week, though, too, right? It starts with the numbers and getting them structured and organized. But the thing that our software does, too, is it creates this level playing field for common communication to happen across the board, right? So now all the numbers are out of dad's head and into a structured format that's easy for anybody in the operation to step in and start to comprehend and understand. Because most people, again, if you train your son or daughter just as an employee of the operation, they may be a great farmhand, but what it takes to be a farmhand and what it takes to be a true CEO of the business is completely different skill sets, a completely different person. And so that's where we talked last week. The sooner you can get your kid, maybe it's one, maybe it's two, that you think are going to have what it takes to actually take over the operation, you need to get them involved in the management side of the operation as soon as they possibly can. And again, too, going back to my divine timeline and that type of stuff, I'm super grateful for Legacy Farmer, for example. I had to live in literally every seat in the business. I had to live in marketing and ads. I had to live in sales. I had to live in operations. I had to live in fulfillment. I had to live in all these things here because I know what it takes to operate and be successful in that seat, which means when I'm passing it on and delegating it to somebody else, I have expectations there. Right? Versus if you have somebody that has just been a farmhand, let's say a feed truck driver, for example, for their entire life, and they know how to drive the feed truck like hell, great and everything. They're super successful at it. But then let's say mom and dad pass away and all of a sudden they're thrown into the CEO seat. That kid is set up for failure. There's no way that they'll succeed. The operation may not go under, but it's guaranteed it will not grow for that generation as well. And so you have to start bringing the kids into these conversations as soon as we can, because we have to develop them from employee to manager to supervisor to business owner to CEO mindset there. And that timeline there, it can take 10 to 20 years, but you better start now. Otherwise, if you're dumping all this on a 50-year-old who's still in their mind is just an employee of the operation, you're doing them a disservice and you're doing your legacy a disservice.
Oh, that's good. Okay, I'm going to go in a different direction here, and I think it will go great with the way you are sharing. Yep. I want to ask you, why do farm founders avoid the conversation? Is it the fair and equal? Is it the fear of numbers? Is it the not sure how to handle it? What's the fuzziness there if a farm founder's ignoring it? They don't think the farm can afford it and they don't want to share that. What do you see?
Yeah, so I think it's all dependent upon the situation that they're in, right? So let's say, first and foremost, the biggest issue that we deal with today is son or daughter comes back to the operation and they start asking financial questions, right? To be brought in there. But then mom and dad are like, yeah, don't worry about that. We got that covered, that type of stuff. Massive red flag for me there, right? Because either they know the situation is terrible and they know that the son or daughter shouldn't be coming back, so they're trying to hide that hard reality there, or they don't have a way to actually share the information. They're not structured. They're not organized. They don't have what we do in Legacy Farmer there. But more times than not, the first problem there is what's true, right? So it's this fear of being exposed first and foremost, around the problems and situations that the operation's in today. Because, and this is the number one challenge that people have coming into Legacy Farmer too. We have some people, they tell us they've been following us for 2 or 3 years. And it's like, cool. So what caused you to wait 2 or 3 years to come in? Because the problems that they have today, guess what? The problems they had 2 or 3 years ago, same thing, right? Nothing has changed. Nothing's evolved or gotten better or anything there. And for most men, and I'm just speaking from a man's point of view, there's this fear of being exposed. Because once the numbers are laid out, all the bad decisions, all the mistakes you made over the past 5, 10, 15, 20 years are all there on the table. And that's a lot of weight for again, speaking as a man, that's a lot of weight to deal with, because now you feel like you let your family down. You feel like you're not worthy of this. Maybe you let the generation down before you, like all that weight that comes into them. And so the first reason they avoid the conversation is because fear of being exposed. Second one could be more spouse driven, where the wife wants everybody to be around for Thanksgiving dinner. All right. Wants everybody there to celebrate Christmas. Wants the family to stay together. And so instead of pissing everybody off, you just say, well, you can just deal with it when I'm dead. That's a coward's way out, in my opinion, right? Part of being the CEO is you have to be okay with being the asshole, right? And we talked about this last week in the room too. Some of the negative things about being a leader is you are going to have to make decisions that are not going to be in the best interest of some people around you that you love and care about. Right. But again, it's a requirement. You're going to be misunderstood in every decision that you make, and you're going to be disliked or resented for it. Those are hard things to carry, right? But again, it's like, what do you want? Do you want to pass on an operation that's ultimately going to get dissolved because you're not willing to be that person today to make those hard decisions there and carry on and make sure the family legacy is secured and ready for the next generation? Or do you want to make everybody happy and then just leave the problem to them, which is going to inevitably end up in all your kids suing each other, and then your entire life's work, or maybe the generations before you, is going to be dissolved because it's going to get sold off?
So many layers there. I could see
so many layers,
right? It's so easy being that guy if you were going to a boardroom and it wasn't your kids and wife right there, but it's family, right? Okay. So I want to ask you about fair and equal. And then the next part I want to focus on. Jace, let's say you had a son or a daughter, either or, equal opportunity. They are going to come back to the farm. Let's walk through, after the fair and equal, what the next generation should do to be successful. Like the hardest part I find about doing these episodes, I want black and white. I want plans for the next generation. Because sometimes, like, what do I do? Who do I say? What age? Like, right? So let's go to fair and equal. I am concerned, and Jace, I am assuming we're around the same age. In the time that we've been alive, transition planning wasn't a real thing for my grandparents. I don't speak too freely, but it's the reason I have the show, because I don't speak to half my aunts and uncles and cousins anymore because of it. My why? They didn't know. And I'm going to say, okay, fine. They get a little grace because, heck, the internet, these podcasts weren't around. They didn't know. Here we are. We're in this generation. But from my grandpa, who just wanted to pass it on to one child, and that's the way it was, and the farm continued on, to I'm seeing it. And what makes me concerned is the pendulum, right? From all the way over here, and you can see it in society, just equality, and that's great. We're going fair and equal. But my wording that I've started to use is, are we going to fair and equal the family farm to death? Share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, because if you do make everything fair and equal, again, you're essentially, your kids are siblings, right? Siblings typically don't make good business partners. And once you try to make the farm operation fair and equal, you are pushing them into this unchosen relationship where now they have to be business partners with their siblings. I don't know one situation where it's working out. And the people that it is working out, they're 1 in a million. To where maybe two brothers can get along there and they can actually be level-headed and logical and understand emotion. Those two people, though, have done an immense amount of personal development work to understand and have the awareness of what's happening in the situation, which most people in the industry have not. My parents did not do any of that. My uncles did not do any of that. My aunts, 100% convinced, Tracy, even if my granddad would have passed on our operation today, it would be dissolved within one generation, because there's no way in hell my dad would have got along with his brothers or his sisters, or they would have seen eye to eye on all the decisions that were being made. You got $10 or $15 million rolling through the operation at today's prices. I mean, my granddad had a $6 million operating line credit back in 2005. to run the feed yard, just the feed yard by itself. That'd be a $20 to $25 million operating line of credit today. Like there's no way that I would have any trust in any of those people to be able to become the person that could handle the weight of the risk that they're taking, right? And the responsibility there. So anyways, I say all that because if you're expecting and planning on this bright, lovely, butterflies and rainbows type future there by splitting the farm operation up, evenly between your kids, consider the reality. And it's a high probability you're opening them up to years and decades of hurt and ultimately to end up with your life's work getting dissolved.
Just the same result.
Yep.
If you had structured it different and allowed the farm to continue on. Here's the thing I hear, and I just want your thought on this. And that would be having the siblings own it equally, rent from the non-farming, that type of setup, whether it's a corporation, whatever structure. The other thing, I like also speaking freely with finances. Let's be real here. So if this farm requires all these assets, all these cattle, all this land, all this equipment to operate, and then you're now divvying up the wealth, the finances don't make sense there. No. Or let's go the second one is, let's say I'm the farmer and I have 3 siblings. Now I need to buy them out. And especially at the current market land prices,
farm can't afford to.
My farm can't afford to even, well, maybe if I made that decision on the best years, I might be able to, but on average, I can't afford to, right?
Yep. No, absolutely. It will not work financially. Just think about the price of ground today versus what it was back in the early 2000s.
Right.
Like there's no way it would work. And now you combine higher interest rates too, which, slowly coming down and everything. But what we've experienced over the past 2 or 3 years, there's no way that plan would work. Yeah. Right. And again, the situations there, think about me being, I'm the one that went back to the farm operation and now I have to buy out my siblings there. Think about how you are, as a parent, setting your kids up to have no relationship in the future. Because I'm going to resent my siblings across every ounce of my being is going to resent them because they're trying to make me pay market value for something the family already owned. And it doesn't make sense. Now, let's fast forward in just to a banking side of things. Let's say every kid came back to the farm operation. All of them wanted to farm. That's awesome. But now you have 3 different business owners that have different ideas and different ways they're thinking about the business. And now they're wanting to divvy up assets. Well, guess what? From a banking side of things, what if everything's cross-collateralized? Banking going to allow you to do that. Right? They're not going to allow. So it's just now we have another layer of conflict and challenges there that most people, they're not thinking about. But these are the stories and the experiences that we hear our customers talk about every single day.
Ooh, wow. Yeah, that's a deep one. And to be honest, I want people to speak frankly about it because I find, and maybe it's me, but I find there's a lot of, we're not really actually going to talk about it. And I'm like, okay, well, and me, I'm trying to work through this to ask my guests the best questions. I'm like, okay. And then also I'm not you. I don't look at hundreds of farmers' finances. So I'm like, okay, I know our operation. If I had to start paying out people, it's not going to work. So now I'm to the point I have the courage to say it. And I want us here to say that type of thing. So the next generation and the founders go, oh, okay, this is knowledge. This is real, right?
Yep. And so with a lot of people though, too, that's why when I came across whole life insurance and structuring it in a unique way back in 2018, that was a method I saw for parents to invest in so that when it was time to pass on the operation and they had 4 kids, the one son or daughter that wanted to take over the operation, they don't have to dissolve the assets, right? They don't have to buy back the farm a second or a third time. They get all the farm assets. All the other kids get cash from the whole life insurance policy and they can move forward that way. And I do know several operations that have done that successfully. But again, those were decisions that they made 40 years ago. This is a long-term strategy versus people, unfortunately, in our industry, they kick the can down the road and they say, oh, we'll deal with that in the future. Well, it doesn't take long for a couple of decades to go by and not shit has gotten done. And now all of a sudden we can't, the strategy we could have implemented 20 years ago, we can't do that today. Maybe it'd cost too much, or the farm operation is in a different financial situation right now, and we're too leveraged right now. There's all these other variables here that come into play with that too.
Okay, so getting right to the nitty gritty, the truth of it, if you have a policy like that and you were thinking further ahead, like our generation, we can do this still. We're young. If you're in the audience at that age, I've done an episode with Mary Jo Ehrman about the policy. I'm just trying to sort through this. So farmers, I'm going to be very blunt here, Jace. Farmers, your option, it's give it all to the kid so the farm continues on.
Mhm.
If there's non-farming assets, it's you can give those to the non-farming kids. It's
Yep.
having a life insurance policy, or it's trying to do it fair and equal. Are those
Yep.
the options?
Yeah, to me, and right, and that's where, as the leader, as the business owner, let's say I have a son that wants to come back and take over the operation. The operation's got $10 million in assets. When I have 3 other kids, well, it's going to be really hard to get $30 million in life insurance money to pass, so I can pass on $10 million to each kid there, right? So it's equal across the board there. But guess what? That's not the way the world works. Right. And you have to be okay with that, even going to your grave, that, hey, some of my kids, as a leader, I'm going to make decisions again that have a negative impact on some people that I do love and care about. I'm going to be okay with being misunderstood, and I'm going to be okay with being disliked or resented. And even going to the grave, even if those 3 kids, let's say they get $1 million cash, well, cry me a river. That's a great opportunity there. But I'm not going to dissolve or take the risk of dissolving my life's work when I have one son or daughter that has shown to me, one, their commitment to the family farm operation and legacy, but also, two, they've shown the skill sets of a CEO that can handle the weight and the responsibility that comes with trying to build this operation into and move it forward in that generation and get it to the next level. Right. And that's where, like, people, you have to be okay with that. And if your kids don't understand that, those conversations too, this is where I get really worried around, even with me and my kids as well. Right. You raise these spoiled little brats, never have to want for anything, never have to struggle and that type of stuff. Right. And so that we talked about that at the event there last week as well. And I said, guys, the only reason I'm here right now is because my parents lost everything, and I had to go through the struggle and the sequence of events. Yes, the sequence of events that God had planned for me to build me into the person I am today. If I would have had the feed yard to go run back to, guarantee I am not near at the level of a human being that I am today without those struggles and experiences there. And so people, they want to protect the kids. To me, I'm like, throw them into the fire. Like, let them feel the weight of it, because in that fire, one, God is intending for them to go through it. Otherwise, it wouldn't come through. If you try to protect them from that, you are robbing them of God's journey that he planned for them. So that's first and foremost. But two, you're robbing their development.
Yes.
There's going to be lessons learned there. There's going to be things learned there. So that was a huge discussion point last week as well with our members and letting their kids struggle and trying to protect them too much. You're robbing them.
Jace, you should have told me about your event. I would have drove 18 hours to get there too. That sounded great.
Yeah.
Hey, the way you say that, I love it. Thank you for speaking truth and honesty with me on the fair and equal. I think I'm going to take just that clip and like publish it monthly now for the rest of my life.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's important. Like we just need truth and honesty. And I love what you said about not taking away the hard from your kids. We've farmed alongside Anthony's parents. Yes, we've had the beautiful joy, grace, and I am so grateful that we've been able to use the land while we've been building up. Very fortunate, but we hold 3 mortgages. I said to Anthony, this is not ours. Inheritance, that's me, but I want to make my own way in the world. Built my own media company. I'm not doing this, but that's my mojo, my prerogative in life. We have 3 mortgages. We're not asking for anything free. We're buying land from his parents. And you might go, well, that's dumb, Tracy. You're paying for the land again. Neither here nor there. It's also control too, right? I know we have what we need. We're paying for it, but it's not going to be crown land taken away from this. It's not going to be any family issues, right? And
so one thing I'll point out here too, right? And I talk about my journey and going through Legacy Farmer and the value of me having to be in every seat, right?
Yeah.
Through that experience, it taught me how to build a business.
Yes.
Right. Which means I'm not in a place, let's say my parents did still have some ground or some assets in there that they want to pass on to me. I'm in a situation now where I know how to create value in the world. I know how to market. I know how to sell. I know how to run operations. I know how to, I developed all these skill sets here to where, yes, in your same situation as you, I would feel obligated to buy it from my parents because I could.
Yes.
But most people inside the ag industry, they don't go through their process and development as a person at the same stages there. And so when it gets to that point there to where the parents are needing to pass things on or something like that, they're not going to buy it. They're going to have this expectation that should be given that it should be given to them because they have to have it. They don't know how to go create it, right? They don't know how to go create value and money and everything like that to buy these assets. Completely different frame. Right, of how people are raised there. And that's what, again, where you'll rob your kids of doing that. I tell all of our members too, they're like, well, how do I get what's the fast track to getting my kids to think like a business owner and like a CEO? Make them go start their own business.
Ooh, I love it.
They
Yeah.
come back early 20s, make them go start their own business. Guess what? My granddad built the operation to, 10 to $15 million. Think about what he had to work with back then.
Yeah.
Right? Not near as easy as the resources and tools and everything we have today to be on a public forum like this message going out to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people across America and Canada. The ease of what we can do today. If I can learn how to do this, my kids damn well better be willing to learn how to do this as well. Otherwise, they're entitled to nothing. And here's the other thing I'll add on this too. When it comes to legacy farmer is not mine. To me, it's God's. He put me in place of stewarding this business right now. But when you change your mindset to where this isn't mine, this is God's. He put me here for a reason. I'm just here to try to steward it in the best way I can. That also changes your frame on, hey, just because he put me here doesn't mean my kids automatically are entitled to this because their last name is the same as mine.
I love that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so now if I look at it from that perspective there, who do I need to put in control of this business or this operation for the next generation that God would want in control?
Nice.
It kind of just changes my frame there a little bit on how I look about the business, but also to how I look about succession planning and legacy planning.
I love that. Okay, let's speak to that Gen 2.
Hmm?
Really tactical. Let's say you were advising them. Guy, girl, they want to go back to the farm. They're going to go to university. Actually, I'm going to ask you that. Make it your kid if you want to. How would you tell them step by step to run their life or suggest?
Yeah.
Should they go get an education? Should they work off farm? When should they talk to the parents? Here's my questions for you. Going to school, working off farm, big one, Jason, just answer them all with one blanket statement.
Yeah.
All of those things. When should they come back? How long do you wait around if your parents are going, maybe. Talk about that. Prepare that next person.
Yeah. So my view on education is, and my wife and I, we've went to we've had some battles over this as well, because I was a C&D student, right? I really connect the most with my second daughter. She hates school and that type of stuff. I'm like, hey, Hayden, I get it. Totally get it. I was the same way, fought it every way, in every second, every grade and everything like that. But when I went to college though, my kids know that I won't be paying for any college. If they want to go, they can go on their own dime, because this is just what happens. And the reason that we charge a fee for like what we do in Legacy Farmer, right? A lot of universities will try to do what we're doing and they'll do it for free. And guess who shows up to that room? Nobody. There's no skin in the game. And so if you want to go to college, great, go ahead and do that. But you are cutting the checks at that time there. So we can make sure that you're staying focused there, and which most kids won't anyway, because we go to college, we're still immature, want to drink and party, that type of stuff, right? I did the same thing.
Yeah.
But I won't be pushing my kids to do that, because it's even funnier, right? So let's take marketing degrees, for example, right? There's kids around here that'll go to Kansas State University. They'll pay 25 grand, maybe it's even more than that now, per semester to get a marketing degree and learn from teachers who have never run a Facebook ad, Tracy.
I know.
I'm not going to go do that, right? I'm done with the world of having this education in this classroom format that teaches theory, when everything that I want to learn and know how to do is found out there and doing, and I can find cheap education on YouTube that's going to show me and give me enough insight at that point to get to the next level. Yeah. Right. So I have a much different opinion on it than what most people probably do, especially in America as well, because it's still the traditional thing. You're taught, trained, and conditioned, go to school, get good grades, go to college, and then you'll be successful. Well, that shit is not happening. It doesn't happen. And you're robbing yourself again of thinking that you're just going to go there and learn in a classroom skill sets and things like that can only be experienced, right? And learned by doing there. So I share all that because on the college side of things, my kids want to go, they're going to be paying for it. But if I was advising Gen 2 and a business owner that wants to come back to the operation, if they want to go to college, okay, great. But when you come back to the operation, go build a business that runs alongside it. That way you develop yourself as into that business owner mindset, because you're going to have to be an employee. Then you're going to have to be a manager. You're going to have to live in every seat of your operation. You can look to your parents for counsel, but I hope they don't step in and save your ass, because that'll be a complete downfall to you. And now you're trained in thinking that there's always going to be the safety net for you. But go build a business, right? Go through and do that, and build something that runs alongside the family farm operation That way, when you get there, you have a understanding for what you're taking over. Because the reason that a majority of family farm operations go under for second, third, or fourth generation is because you have a generation that's inheriting assets that they didn't have to pay for, and they don't respect what they're getting.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't understand the flow of money.
No.
Hey, Jace, I went to university. I took all the and no, I have a very mixed feel. I echo exactly what you say on education. You don't know until you actually do it. The great thing, we ended up building alongside Anthony's parents, which was fantastic, our own farm business. We bought 50 heifers. Market timing, we bought them high, sold them low. They didn't gain. We lost on just 50 heifers while we were both working full time. Ouch. But I think at the end, it was a $5,000 loss. It wasn't losing.
Oh, small compared to what it'd be. Yeah.
We learned. And like you said, with the side operation, you're learning because I don't care what books tell you, what Excel you work on at school. You don't get it until it's your real numbers and you're playing with it, right?
Yeah. And that's where I've said over the years too, people will not learn a skill set until they have to. Right. And so what I mean by that is a lot of people coming into legacy farmer, they have ag business management degrees. Okay, great. But when you were 21, were you thinking about ag business management at that age? No, you weren't. And nor were you forced to. Fast forward 15, 20 years. Now, all of a sudden, your family's livelihood is dependent upon the decisions or skill sets that you have or don't have today. So now people coming into legacy farmer, they're investing money and we're getting 100% of their time and attention, because if they don't pay attention, all their life's work is gone. Right. Or they lose everything, or they have to, they lose a ton of money or whatever that is. They're like, now it becomes real. And that's why I go back to most people, they don't learn a skill set until they're at a point in life where they have to, because now it's getting their attention.
I love it.
Yeah.
One last question. We've had a lovely conversation here, and I know we could go for 3 hours. I could anyways. I love this stuff. Communication. You're coming back to the farm. You want to make your intent known to your parents, and it should be clear. You're the farm child. You're coming back. You're going to work. There's money there to pay you. What I don't like seeing is people trusting, like you've said so many times. And then it's like, oh, we're busy with harvest. Let's talk about it. It's not hard for a lot of time to go by. You have a little mini conversation this year, all of a sudden your parents up and fair and equal it, and you are 45. You don't have a pension. Speak to that, because high control Tracy wants everybody in control of their life.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So I'll go back to a couple conversations when I was still taking sales calls and everything in Legacy Farmer back in 2020. I remember 3 different conversations I had that year, Tracy, with men that were 45 to 60, literally crying to me on the phone because they went back to the operation at 23, 24, right? Got married, had kids, set up their entire life there, right? People invested time and energy to be there. Their spouse gave up opportunities of what they could do with their life to come back and be there with you, all with this promise that, hey, one day we'll get to take this over, without anything being in writing. And then all of a sudden, farming today is not the same way it was back in early 2000s or late 90s or whatever, when these guys went back there. And they said to me on the phone, they're like, I'm 45. I have absolutely nothing to show my wife, nothing on my balance sheet, nothing. And now I find out too that my parents are so leveraged with debt, Jace, that I have nothing to take over either. It's like my heart hurts for those people, but that's the type of crap that's happening when somebody goes back, and you're a kid too, right? So you feel bad for challenging your parents on this or asking for this stuff. The cost of not doing it, and the price that not only you're going to pay, but your spouse is going to pay, your kids are going to pay 20 to 25 years into the future. You don't want to face those costs from just having some uncomfortable conversations today. But also too, as parents now, and this is what happens, it depends on how the parents were raised as well, right? So for me, for example, I had to struggle and grind and build to have everything that I have today, right? But I've been exposed to enough of this stuff though too, to where when, if we have something happen with my daughters in the future, I'm going to be welcoming that conversation. I'm going to be thinking about that conversation before they were having, because I've experienced so many negative outcomes from people that didn't have it there, to where that's just the importance of getting people exposed to these problems. That's why, like, the value of the network that we're building in Legacy Farmer, and just the value in the room last week with 200 people, Day three was all legacy and estate planning. The younger generation in that room that was hearing the pain in the voices of the people that were in their 50s and 60s or 70s trying to figure out how to navigate these conversations now with their children when they should have talked about it 30 years ago, that's going to light a fire under their asses to go and get this stuff done today. Those are the problems there that we're trying to avoid there. But again, you got to look at the cost of not taking action, having some uncomfortable conversations there today, and compound it and think about how it's going to impact you 20, 25 years from now. When you have kids, you have a wife that's been there with you for 20 years and sacrificed and given up opportunities there to walk away with nothing. Yep.
I was going to ask you for final words of wisdom, but that was pretty darn good right there.
Well, the thing is, though, too, is when you think about it, my parents were those kids.
Yeah. That breaks my heart, honestly. Yeah. It is so important for a person's, I think, self-confidence, integrity, security, not to be that person finding out at 50 that you look back and you go, oh, like yuck. Yep. Sorry. Yep. Not professional, but yuck is my word.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And it's disheartening. It's disappointing for the industry, but also too, the reason I think that parents should be welcoming that conversation, because we're also setting a standard on how business is done. And one other big issue we have in the industry is, and especially with some of our customers coming in, when it comes to doing business with other farmers and ranchers around them, guess what's never in clear writing? There's never any clear contract. There's never any payment due date on this date or whatever. And some of our customers' balance sheets, we'll look at their accounts receivable. It's to the tune of $500,000 or $1 million because they have never set a strong standard on, hey, this is how we do business. Right. So even the parents coming back, the reason it's important for them to get that stuff handled right away is because you're also training your kids on how business should be done. Otherwise, you end up to where everybody in this industry, they want to help out their neighbor. Oh, I'm sorry, but more times than not, people end up getting taken advantage of to the tunes of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars as well. Whether that's with their parents or whether that's with anybody they're doing business with.
Wow.
Yep.
2 places I'm going to go. I heard you use the wording. You want to hand down a business in a box to the next generation. So can you use that idea, share more about how they can learn about legacy farmer? And then your final question that you want to share is, what is legacy?
So with anybody that comes into legacy farmer, like I said, our software creates a level playing field, right? Where the entire business is structured and organized. So not just finances, but we have balance sheets, cash flow projections, field by field level profitability for each individual business. But then past that, there's a lot of other tools and stuff that we're building out in there as well. So all the numbers are right there, right? Out of dad's head or out of mom's head in the software there, anybody can come in and they're all looking at the same numbers, can ask the same questions and that type of stuff. We can start getting the younger generation trained and educated there. But on top of that, though, we start mapping out the different parts of their operation, right? So think about like an org chart, for example. Most of the customers, when they're coming in, the typical farmer, right? They're doing 8 different things on the operation. They live in every seat there and they wonder why they can't grow it or they don't delegate it successfully as well. We start helping them build this out, even if it's a one-person show, because when the kids come back now too, let's say, we talked about this last week as well. Husband dies in the operation, right? We have farm accidents all the time. Husband dies in the operation. Wife has no idea where their things are at financially, has no idea what should be happening on this field, that field, how much grain's in the bin, that type of stuff there. But then also just from an organizational standpoint, has no idea who does what on the operation. Right. So when this whole idea around business in a box is so that when your kids do come back, they have a complete financial blueprint and strategy there and historical data as well. They know exactly what's happening in the operation from a financial standpoint. But then from an operational and organizational standpoint too, they can see exactly how the structure works in the operation, who's responsible for what are the roles and responsibilities, but also too, how is communication supposed to flow inside the operation as well? That's a big part there because I talk about my granddad. He built a centralized operation, right? Where there's 15 employees on the feed yard. He's got 5 kids involved. There's multiple farmers and that type of stuff there, where every question, every decision had to flow through him. Right. So now his phone's blowing up 60, 70, 80 times a day. He doesn't get anything done because he's just answering questions for everybody. And people wonder why they get burned out. Whereas when we set up that org chart there, and we call it the team chart inside of our software, it also showcases who's responsible for what, who's managing and overseeing other employees in the operation, and how communication is supposed to flow. The operation, most people, we've been raised in this world where, and again, my granddad was the same way, where he taught my dad that, hey, Kevin, you're supposed to sacrifice your life to serve the needs of the operation. Should not be that way. The operation should be operating in a way where it gives you the ability to serve your life, right? Not the other way around there. And a lot of people, they get that mixed up. So the whole concept behind business in a box is that people can come back, they can log into the software, and they can literally see from an operational and financial standpoint exactly how that operation moves and breathes on a day-to-day basis.
Nice. And we'll put links in our show page everywhere so people can check it out. If they want to learn more, can they just go to the website?
Yep. Legacyfarm.com. And they're going to be able to schedule a call with our team, and we move forward that way. Yep.
Wonderful. Now I am interested in the response to this. What is legacy?
So for me, legacy has nothing to do with passing on assets or any ground or anything like that. And the reason I say that is because my granddad built his entire life around what he was passing over, which was real estate, the feed yard, that type of stuff there. But the guy ended up passing away in 2015, and he had $1 million life insurance policy. And guess who that went to?
Oh, I don't know.
The bank.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So built everything for 50 years to literally die in his grave with nothing. And so when it comes to legacy for me, my kids don't deserve any of what I've built right now. If I can give them opportunities though, right? Because I have 4 daughters. The chance that one of them wants to come back and run Legacy Farmer, it's pretty damn well 0, right? They have different interests and different things that they want to do there, and things like that. So my job then is I want to make sure I at least give them an opportunity to pursue whatever it is that they want. So when it comes to whole life insurance policies, leaving them a set amount of cash so they can access at different ages as well. I'm not giving my kids just $1 million at age 22. Right. So they access it. Everything in my estate plan is set up for access to cash at 30, 35, and 40. Right. They get a certain access to those opportunities there. But all my definition of legacy is built around, I have no obligation. My kids are entitled to nothing that I've built other than I want to make sure they have an opportunity to build and chase whatever their dreams and desires are after I'm gone. And that's it.
That is lovely. Jace, I have loved this conversation so much. Thank you. You just have such a tremendous body of knowledge from the good and the bad that your whole family's gone through. So you know what? Thank you so much for this work that you are doing. I truly believe like this is the magic sauce, the mindset, the finances to build the next leader, right? So
agreed.
Continue. Thank you so much.
No, I really appreciate you giving me the time and chance and opportunity here to share what I've learned and also to the mistakes I've made along the way.
I love it. So, thank you so much, Jace.
Okay.
You in the audience, if you love this as much as I did, like it, share it, and get it out there because this was a powerful conversation. See you next week. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.